doing a comparison of two films, both the same but just released in different years. One's an original and one's a remake. The film I'll be doing is The Parent Trap. On the left here is the remake, it's the more modern one, and on the right here is The Parent Trap, which was the two-part one, which was actually the old one. In a nutshell, when two very different lives collide, two girls who couldn't have lifestyles more contrasted meet at a holiday camp. Yet they share one big similarity, their looks. As you can see in that picture there, they're twins. Are they just incredibly similar looking, or is there more that meets the eye? The story follows the adventure of two young girls both about to embark on a trip of their lifetime. After a rocky start and a lot of animosity between them at the beginning, they eventually become friends. Gradually, the pieces add up. One girl is without a father and the other a mother. Is this a coincidence? Definitely not. The girls are long-lost identical twins. The discovery comes after a torn photograph they both have fixed together. On discovery of this life-changing information, the inquisitive troublesome two decide to swap lives and meet with their other parent, whom they have never met before. Not wanting to miss out on any more time together, they plan to get their parents back together, and, like a much successful Disney film, they live happily ever after. The Parent Trap, 1961 or 1998. These films are of the romantic comedy, or romantic adventure genre. The 1961 original, directed by David Swift, who also produced films including Pollyanna and The Love Boat, so they're all kind of the same genre. The 1998 remake, directed by Nancy Meyers, who also directed The Holiday, my favourite film. It's Complicated, What Women Want, and Something's Gotta Give. These are to name just a few of her highly successful romantic comedies. She's been nominated for Oscars and various other awards for both her directing and writing. She collected the Writers Guild of America for Best Comedy, written directly for screen. Other examples are Private Benjamin and Baby Boom. Meyers also won the Women's Director Award in 2007. Nancy Meyers has recently signed a deal with Sony Pictures Entertainment to direct a new romantic comedy, soon to be released early this year, so I'll be looking out for that one. The Parent Trap, 1998. Financial determinants. The budget of this one was $15 million, making a box office of $92 million, with a gross profit of $76 million and a gross margin of 83.17%. The markup was 494%. So as you can see, this was a highly successful film. It made a large profit, and obviously the profits were incredible compared to these days as well, because the money was so much more sort of yearned for in the film industry. Within the first week of release, the film grossed $11 million, whilst its widest release was 2,247 theatres in just the United States and Canada alone. In the first week, it ranked 2 at the box office, just behind Saving Private Ryan. This was Lindsay Lohan's first movie. She had her ears pierced especially for this role. The Parent Trap, 1961 financial statistics. I don't know why you can't see them up here, but they're all here. The budget was $3 million, which, as you can see, because it's sort of an older film, they didn't have as much budget to go onto it, and obviously things sort of, it wasn't that long ago, but things didn't cost as much to produce, and there were less camera techniques and stuff like that, so they made sort of do with what they've got. The box office made $25 million, with a gross profit of $22 million and a gross margin of 88%. The markup was 738%. And so obviously this was still a highly successful film. Not as successful as the remake, but for an original it was pretty good in this time. Technologies. The remake 1998 film was shot on a 35mm film using a Panaflex camera and lenses by Panavision. The film relied on special effects and camera tricks by splicing the scene shots together and body doubles in order to make Lindsay Lohan double as her twin. Because obviously it was a story about two twins and they specifically wanted to use Lindsay Lohan. They used a lot of camera techniques, so what they'd do is they'd splice scenes to make it look like they were talking to each other or appearing in the same scene. And on the scenes where they actually needed someone to, for example, like a shot with both of them in, they would use a body double, so it'd all be from behind rather than any from the front. All UK versions are cut to remove the 1 second clip of Lindsay Lohan having her ear pierced. For the scene, she actually had to get it pierced, and there was uproar about it, obviously quite small, but it was criticised that the clip was actually in there, and yeah, because she obviously had to really get it done for this. The original. The original was filmed in a much the same way, but with an aspect ratio of 1:85 to 1, and the original was only 1:33 to 1. The original version of the film relied mainly on body doubles and not camera techniques as much. With the original, technology hadn't developed as quickly, so they had to rely on sort of using stuff that was actually physically there. So they used body doubles a lot more frequently, whereas in the new one, they didn't have to spend so much time doing that and obviously pay someone as much for spending so much time there, because they used more camera tricks. Distribution and exhibition. The original film was premiered in America on the 12th of June in 1961, and it was released on the 21st of that month. The remake was premiered on the 20th of July 1998 and released on the 29th of that month. It was released in the UK and on the 11th of December that year. The last country it was released in and shown in theatres was Kuwait on the 16th of February 2000. So that's an incredible almost 3 years later, it reached a country. It is likely that it took this long, as the same film reels were probably used worldwide due to a lack of digital technology in the older version. In Japan, it was called The Family Game. In America, rentals of the film alone made $30 million. Distributed by the Buena Vista Distribution Company, a brand name used for the same divisions of the Walt Disney Company. Trends, social revolution. 1961 was a positive year. This impacted on the genre of films and the types of films that were popular and higher grossing. These included 100 Dalmatians, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and A West Side Story. This year saw an incredible fall of racism, sexism, and as well as homophobia. This is why it was named as the Swinging 60s. The films that were most popular in this year reflect the state and behaviour of the culture at the time and illustrate women to be powerful and shows the acceptance of common discrimination taboos. The Parent Trap is highly significant as it demonstrates forgiveness, but moreover accepting someone for who they are. These two sisters have been brought up very different lives, yet the hostility between them decreases as they become closer and are more reunited as a family again. This signifies the same thing that was sort of happening in this year. When this film was released, a lot of families broke up due to homophobia, discrimination. So this film sort of signified the change in the era of when people were getting back together and forgiving people for their differences and putting everything aside from it. Of course, being a Disney production, it has a happy ending anyway. And politically, at this time, the current Prime Minister made the Wind of Change speech, which called for the independence of individuals and the start of protests against the racial segregation at the time in Africa. I believe that the positivity and social and political revolution of this time greatly affected the success of the films. Because it's sort of, when something good is happening in an environment or a country, people reflect upon that. They want to listen to more positive music and watch more positive films. So that's why this film done so well, because it was such a positive year that people wanted to watch stuff like this as opposed to sort of sci-fi and things that aren't sort of real life. Trends. The remake. Although at box office this film made an exceptional amount more than its original, it was less successful in the movie charts compared to its competitors. The 90s consisted of a wide mixture of film genres, romantic adventure, action, but more specifically sci-fi and fantasy. One that took the film industry by storm was Star Wars, with the introduction of more complex CGI, more suited to these genres. So basically, Star Wars suits CGI. It suits the revolution of camera development and camera techniques, which obviously romantic comedy doesn't really need that kind of stuff because it's basically true in real life. So anything that's fantasy meant that camera producers and the filmers, they could go and do whatever they wanted. They can create anything. So that's why Star Wars and stuff it was new and it was less seen and it became more popular than romantic comedies. Although it was used in the 80s, it wasn't as exceptional as its transformation in the 90s, and therefore we see an increase in sci-fi and a decrease in the more simple romantic films, including The Parent Trap, which needed only subtle CGI. The Titanic, of course, had love, adventure and CGI, and as a romantic film grossed more than the most of this time. So basically, because the Titanic was such a phenomenal story, I can't say that, phenomenal story, and it had great settings, and it needed CGI because it wasn't obviously possible to film something on that scale. So that one did hit the box office, and it did do a lot better than a love story like Parent Trap, because the CGI was what audiences now wanted to see. Cast. Character. So, Susan Evers and Sharon McKendrick, basically, in the original, they both had very different names. So the twins were originally called Susan Evers and Sharon McKendrick. And the other twins were called Hallie Parker and Annie James, which Lindsay Lohan played. So obviously what they've done is they've modernised the film for the remake. They've given more modern names, and more names that people can actually sort of empathise with. Whereas Susan Evers and Sharon, by this time that the film was released, they're probably our parents' names. Mitch Evers played by Brian Keith and Dennis Quaid. Maggie McKendrick and Elizabeth James was played by Natasha Richardson, quite a well-known actress, and Maureen O'Hara. And Meredith Blake was played by Vicky Robinson and Elaine Hendricks. So the cast was very similar. They all look pretty similar. I've put them in the same rows. They chose a hot guy to be the dad. They chose not an evil looking, but a sharp featured woman to be the girlfriend. This was to signify her sort of animosity, like the role in this. And the twins obviously were played by quite big women at the time, quite strong roles. And these are probably the breakout roles for them as well. Star comparison, the twins. Hayley Mills was one of the most successful young actresses of this era. Titled A Promising Newcomer, she was awarded a BAFTA for her acting in a 1915 film, Tiger Bay. She was therefore cast to play the troublesome duo. Mills went on to star in the hit The Trouble with Angels, and soon trying to escape her girl-next-door image, she played a mentally troubled teenager in British film Western Crooked. Her most recent roles have included TV production Wild at Heart and a role as Miss Lan in Foster 2012. Lindsay Lohan, well, we all know her. My year has sort of grown up with her. We saw her come out in Parent Trap, and she was sort of who we'd look up to. When she first came out in The Parent Trap, everyone kind of wanted to be her because she was beautiful naturally. Lindsay Lohan began her career as a model and had quickly made appearances in over 60 television adverts, including Pizza Hut and The Gap. The Parent Trap was Lohan's first feature film, which made her a modest sum of money and a Young Artist Award for Best Leading Young Actress. Lindsay Lohan went on to star in teen hit Mean Girls. So she was sort of hired because she'd been a model, young girls still looked up to her when she was on all these adverts, and they just thought that it was someone that people could empathise with and really aspire to be. Mitch Evers, or Nick Parker, obviously the name's changed again. Brian Keith was an already successful award-winning actor when he came to star in The Parent Trap. Keith's first break into television was with his three-part episode of The Tale of Tomorrow, which consequently led him to star in roles such as Police Story, Robert Montgomery Presents, The Adventures of Ellie Queen, and then his own series, Crusader. After The Parent Trap, Keith went on to play the part of Uncle Bill Davies in the comedy Family Affair, a popular show on CBS. Keith suffered from emphysema and lung cancer, even after quitting smoking and appearing in a cigarette endorsement in 1955. In 1957, Keith was found dead with a gunshot wound, 2 months after his daughter Daisy had committed suicide. Dennis Quaid. Inspired by his brother Randy Quaid, who was nominated for an Academy Award, Dennis Quaid dropped out of university to move to LA to pursue a career of his own. He first appeared in Breaking Away in 1979 and then had a role in The Right Stuff. Unfortunately, his career took a turn for the worse as he was diagnosed with anorexia and also formed a cocaine addiction. As you can see, comparing these two, they're different in the routes that they took, whereas obviously Dennis sort of just went in, tried to pursue his career, whereas Brian Keith sort of worked his way up very quickly. But then they're also very similar in the bad parts that they've suffered in their lives. Both been diagnosed with illnesses, both had like bad things happen in their early lives. After the battle, Dennis starred in various programmes and films, and then he made his appearance in Parent Trap, which he actually received very positive reviews for. Most recently, Quaid starred in an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, playing Mr. Krabs' grandfather. So the kids of the time now probably wouldn't recognise it to be him, because it wasn't a time when they would have watched The Parent Trap. But as we know, cartoons always aim at the adults as well. And he also played President Bill Clinton in the 2010 movie The Special Relationship. Ratings. Overall, I thought that the remake of this film was not only a big improvement on the original regarding film techniques, but it was more aesthetically pleasing. The colours were far more vibrant and the storyline was an incredible amount clearer. In the original, I watched it and I couldn't sort of understand what was happening all the time. There was less speech and it was sort of, there's too much to-ing and fro-ing and cuts, and you just don't really bond with the characters as much as you do in the remake. And obviously the filming techniques and the quality is just not as good. So I prefer the remake so much more. Lindsay Lohan gives the film a more up-to-date feel, as she is what society calls beautiful. Viewers may find it harder to empathise with Hayley Mills playing the role, as the look was dated and the character's actions and lifestyle are not as attractive as the 1998 remake. Overall, I give the original 3 stars and the remake 5 stars. That is the end of my presentation.